Right Night is a talk show with published authors, writers, and content creators discussing both the creative and technical sides of writing, as well as the industry surrounding it, from novels to screenplays to comics and more. And now, here's your host, author Travis I. Sivart.
Now, welcome to Right Night, everybody. This episode's topic is going to be Our Newsletter's Dead. We'll get a little more into that in a moment. First, I want to introduce myself. I am Travis I. Sivart, writer of fantasy, sci-fi, cyberpunk, steampunk, and a lot of other stuff. There's material out there. You could just search for my name on the internet or Amazon and find my books available. Beyond that, let's go ahead and introduce our other speakers tonight, our other guests, our other hosts, and let's start with Tara.
Hi, my name is Tara Moeller, and I am Dreamer-in-Chief at Dreampunk Press, publishing collective.
What have you written?
I blanked. And I'm also an author. Yeah, is the little pumpkin sprout coming out of my head yet? Yeah, and I'm also an author. I write under my own name, mostly novellas that are kind of don't fit a specific or single genre. And then also as E.G. Gaddis, which is where I write young adult novels that are mostly either Victorian vampire or steampunk.
There we go. What about you, Robert?
My name is Robert Turk. I am the Goblin-in-Chief at Wicked Clever Books and Games. I'm stealing that title. I love it. I was like, oh, that's cool. Dreamer-in-Chief. I'm Goblin-in-Chief. And I write, I have books of short stories. I write and publish books of short stories, poetry. I wrote a coloring book ages ago. And more frequently now, role-playing games and a young adult novel under the pen name of Robert Ottoman. I'm also a freelance author for other gaming companies, and that's me. That's what I do.
Okay, now for chat, we'd love to hear what is your project right now? What are you writing? Or what are you reading if you don't write? Or if you're an artist, what are you drawing? Tell us what you're working on. What's got you passionate at the moment? Now, speaking of our chat audience, I want to let everybody who is listening to the podcast know that we are live streaming this at twitch.tv/Travis Tavern Talk. And we have an interactive live audience here of folks who we will be reading off comments. This noise right here, Tara, Robert, you can both hear that bell? If you hear that bell, it means I want to interrupt you in a reasonable amount of time to read a comment or multiple comments, depending on how excited everybody gets. Now, for chat, I want everybody here to know we're not necessarily going to read every single comment off. The stuff that is relevant and or amuses the hell out of me, we'll definitely read off. Excuse me, I'm getting all choked up over this. The rest may be just for chat only. Okay, let's see here. I think I'm checking my notes, making sure I did the whole opening thing. I think we did. So I want to talk about Our Newsletter's Dead, because I've had a recent conversation with a group of people who basically said they don't even look at newsletters anymore. And they were writers, by the way. They were writers, and I was looking at revamping my newsletter, and I realized the service I used has changed. I'll get into that a little bit. Let me start out with this. Robert, Tara, do either of you have a newsletter, had a newsletter, want to make a newsletter?
Dreampunk Press has a newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. It's hard to know. I subscribe to a lot of e-newsletters, and a lot of them, unless I'm specifically looking for something at a particular time, I don't even open them. There are a few that I open regularly, but yeah. I have a newsletter. Like I said, Dreampunk Press has a newsletter. One of the things, and I've been part of a lot of different conversations about this as well, because I know there's a couple people that I talk to that are like, oh no, you need a newsletter, you need a newsletter. It's all newsletter. It's all newsletter. Don't even bother with social media. I'm like, how are you going to get newsletter subscribers without social media? Where are you going to tell people that you have a newsletter other than social media? Especially right now during a pandemic when there's nothing going on in person. So I think that social media plays a role in it, but I think that your newsletter does too, depending on what you provide in that newsletter.
Yeah, we'll go into that in a few minutes. Let's,
Yeah,
Robert,
that's where I'm stopping.
where are
So,
you on
yeah.
newsletters?
I have a mailing list, but the only time I ever send anything out, publishing company, is if Drive Through RPG has got a huge sale, if we're launching a Kickstarter, or when I launched my Patreon. It's the only time I send anything out. I honestly forget that I've got it. I forget my password every time and have to have it send it to me, because we send out stuff so infrequently. I will say that I subscribe to two newsletters. One is a fellow author, and I subscribe to her newsletter out of courtesy, because I know it's important to her. I don't read it. I scroll through it when I get it, and every single time I think I should just unsubscribe from this, but I don't, because I know she'll see that I subscribed. So I scroll through it. I see, hey, you're alive. Hey, you've got kids. Hey, you've got cats, and you've got a book. That's cool. Keep doing it. And I subscribe to a newsletter from the public domain something, and it's a group that scans old books that are in the public domain for the typography and imagery and things like that, because I find that fascinating, and those resources I can use as a game designer. If I find something cool, then I can use them as inspiration, or even sometimes graphic design in
Right.
what I'm doing.
See,
Yeah.
my experience with newsletters, and I've got a couple comments to read after I put my thoughts into this. At one point in time, as Tara mentioned, they were really beating the newsletter drum. They were important. The philosophy being, people that signed up for your newsletter said, hey, I want to know what you're doing. It's a captive audience that has climbed into that of their own free will. So, I made a newsletter, and Tara and I have discussed this long and hard over the past 6 years or so, or however long we've been hanging around with each other. And I see it changing now, and we'll get a little more into that. Some of the comments here, by the way, Robert, I am subscribed to a few people who I have not unsubscribed to because I don't want to hurt feelings. But,
Right.
Yeah, like you, it's I almost always open it and then scroll through it and just blank out. Just like, oh, they've got another whatever coming.
Well, and we get bombarded with so many.
We do. Let me read these comments and then we'll go into that. And then we'll talk about the options. You can have social media, newsletters, and all the other things, and brainstorm, because I think we're all looking for a good answer here. Wordowin says, one of my regular commissions is a newsletter for a kennel club. Circulation of around 600 people. I'm not sure how many actually read it, but it's interesting that it's required by the club's charter due to legal requirements. So in that respect, newsletters will be around for a long time, along with fax machines and telephone conferences. When other writers bring up newsletters to me, I suggest they should be done for the same reason they write. Use them for practice. Use them to share the story of your career, so to speak. They're another kind of story. John of Conquest Publishing says, I've always found the amount of work to put out the newsletter may not get a useful return. I've started to make a short video newsletter. And that's an interesting concept because that's a very viable medium at this point in time, short videos. For me, I was still am, on MailChimp. And what has brought this topic to my foreground is I went in there because I have a new thing. I wanted to create a third newsletter, and they now have audiences, which means newsletter members.
Yeah.
And the free version that I'm on, you're allowed one audience. I already had two before they changed it, but you're allowed one now, and up to, I think it's 1,000 or 2,000 subscribers. But if you pay them $10 a month, you can now have three audience, but only 500 subscribers. So if
Total?
you, yeah,
Or
total. But it must have been 2,000 because even with three, if even it was 500 each, it was less than what you get for free. And that confused me. That sounded like a bad business bump there.
yeah.
I'm going to pay you $10 a month and get less out of it. And that made no sense to me. Just to divide up your people into separate newsletters or groups if you're doing multiple things. So, where do we go, guys? Who wants to talk about something? Who's got something on the tip of their tongue? It's
Well, I do use MailChimp for my mailing list, and I use the free one. I just opened up my page to see if it tells me anything about a cap. I'd have to go digging.
Right.
I actually do I like MailChimp. The free one has done everything I need it to do, including when I started sending out I needed a way to distribute the public beta playtest of my next game, Gablonia. I needed a way to distribute it to people that wasn't just I'm posting a link to it on Facebook. I wanted to know who was downloading it, or at least how many people were downloading it, and get it to people, because this is a huge thing in indie gaming. If you're going to launch a Kickstarter, you need a mailing list. You need people that want to know about your product and when it.
Which,
so,
by the way, if I could jump in real quick, with MailChimp,
yeah.
There are apps, widgets you could put on your phone, as well as the information in the site itself, where you can see how many people received it, how many people opened it, and how many people clicked on something and clicked through. And I think the most I've ever seen, I may not have even ever seen double digits. If I did, it must have been once, because it's not sticking.
Yeah, on some things I'll get 20 to 30.
Nice, that's great.
And that's good. That's great audience engagement. That's at the top level of audience engagement. Most things are not. But on some things, because I send it out so infrequently, people see it pop up and they're like, oh, something's on sale. Or this guy's still alive. Or, oh, what's he doing now? So,
see, that's another thing with mailing lists, is how frequently. If you send them out too often, I unsubscribe. If I'm getting multiples a week, but once a month might be reasonable. And again, what do you put in there? Do you make it a story as word or when suggested, so it's very conversational, like a relaxed letter between friends? Do you send out, oh, we've just got a sale, and that's all I'm telling you about is you can buy it cheaper now? Or do you do a blend of the two? And I have tried all kinds of things. Modeling one set of newsletters after what people see on websites, which is a lot of kind of, here's a blurb and you can click on it for more. Here's this and you can click on it for more. Here's a cute video.
Yeah.
And there's a whole thing. You've got to try it for a while to see if it sticks, but all of it seems to have parallel results, which is minimal interaction, minimal unsubscribing, but not a big effect. Tara, you mentioned social media. When you start to talk about this, I want to talk about Hootsuite and other such services.
Okay.
It's because if you're looking at social media, whether it's to trigger things like what Robert is talking about, or let people know your newsletter is out there to subscribe, or because you have a thing going on, social media is a great way to let them know. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think you need to use both. And there's different things that you put out in using different media, even different social medias. There's different things that you put out. I try to only put out a newsletter once a month. What I have been doing, and I really haven't had a lot of attrition with newsletter subscribers. I don't have a big mailing list, but it's been a pretty steady mailing list. And so once a month, I think, is working. And what I use the newsletter for is to let them know stuff's coming. Hey, like in January, hey, I told them about Mechanics of Life coming out. Also let them know that if they're a subscriber, they get 10% off anything when they purchase from the website. And
That's a
that
good brick and mortar comic book
and
store way
that
to do it.
is
Mm-hmm.
something that as long as they're a subscriber, there's no code they need or whatever with the platform that I use, because I use that their email
Mm-hmm.
for reader subscribers. I want to clarify here, because I use my MailChimp. I'm setting my MailChimp up for something else, and a part of that is that audience thing that
Mm-hmm.
you brought up, and I'll bring that up in a sec because I'm talking reader emails. So subscribers, one of the things that they get is that they're getting some automatic benefits, and I'm calling them Dream Punkers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my Dream Punkers get some special benefits by subscribing. They get first dibs on things like, hey, we're going to put out an anthology in 2022, and if you want to submit. So they get first dibs on that kind of information. They're getting this discount. They get told about first, to pre-order the special limited edition hardcover book boxes that have the book plus some extra stuff in them. But I try not to inundate, so they get about once a month. Because with the platform that we use for the website, which is Shopify, which I love, by the way, um, again, you're allowed one audience,
Okay.
okay? And that is my reader audience. However, something that Dreampunk Press is doing, because remember, the Independent Book Publishers Association, is they have something called a book blast, and I've been using that. They're a little bit expensive, but what you get from that is it goes to librarians and in small independent bookstores, and you get told who clicked through for your book, and then you do the follow-up email. So that's what I now have some of these, and I'm like, well, I can't really put them up here because I don't want to inundate a librarian or a small book
Right.
with all this silly stuff. They really only need to know about books.
Right.
So I'm going to be using MailChimp with these for those follow-up emails, because again, it's the free version and you only get one audience.
Right.
So that's how I'm breaking that up. So a lot of times it depends on what your email. These click-throughs, technically they're not subscribing, but when they click through, they know that their information is there. And they're people that are looking to buy books for libraries and small independent bookstores. So they know what the game is. But at the same time, I don't want to inundate them. So
If I can read a comment real quick, Wordwin says, I actually look at email once or twice a month. Social media swarms email to the point, even setting up a filter to make it easier to spot a newsletter, it still fades to the background. Everything we do now, well, not everything, most things we do now tracks your email, and anytime I buy something, buy a new pair of shoes, suddenly I'm getting emails 3 times a week or more, let alone if it's something I'm interested in. I go through my email and try to keep my email with less than a dozen things in it at any time. And they're usually sitting there because I haven't looked at it and explored it and clicked what I need to go do what I need to do. But I see people every day who literally have hundreds or thousands of emails sitting in their email box. And yeah, people gloss over them constantly. And even if they're interested, it's so easy. Here's a general piece of advice. Learn to unsubscribe. Not just from my newsletter if it doesn't interest you, but anything else. If you go buy that new bit of makeup or that new pair of shoes or go to that new clothing store online, even Kohl's or whatever, and you're getting those emails and you don't want them, unsubscribe. Clear out all that crap you're getting. Make that email something you look forward to going through. And the same for social media. When we're following all these people and groups and stores and events, and then suddenly we lose what we're really interested in this mass of, I click because maybe, or I click because I like that person. And now you're getting so much information that you just blank out what you're truly interested in, let alone what the people actually want to get to you, which is what our main subject is, what we want to get to people who said, I'm interested, let me know.
Yeah.
So, Robert, what I heard you say earlier today on your Tea Time stream on twitch.tv/wickedclever, no dash in that one. By the way, websites for these folks, in case we didn't say it, I don't actually remember. Tara can be found at dreampunkpress.com and Robert at wicked-clever.com. That's dreampunkpress.com and wicked-clever.com. Check that out. But I heard you say on your live stream today that you tend to only send stuff out. Thank you for putting those up, Robert. You only tend to send the stuff out when you're like, hey, I've got a sale. And I'm not bugging you for anything else. What kind of format are you putting in there?
Well, I send this out through MailChimp. So it does give a little bit of decoration to it.
Right.
Like, it's got my circular Wicked Clever logo up at the top so they know who it's coming from. And I'm going to hit them with the information right up front. That's just my style. It'll be like, you know what? Deal of the day on Drive-Thru RPG. And then a short blurb about Purgatory House. This is not true, by the way. Purgatory House is not the deal of the day on Drive-Thru RPG right now. But if it was, I would send that out and say, this is deal of the day on Drive-Thru RPG. If you don't have it, if you've liked my other role-playing games, you might like this one. Here's why. And you can get it right now for $4.99. So why don't you do it? And that's pretty much it.
See,
Thank you.
Tara, I've noticed with your, because again, like we've discussed it a lot, and at one point in time it was more of a personal, friendly, chummy interaction type letter, and now you've gone to, here's the black and white bare bones, folks. Here's what I'm trying to tell you. There's no talking about, oh, my car is broke, or my dog did this, and all that. And I've even cut that out because I feel like the people who want to know what my day-to-day life is, they're following one of the social medias where I can mix and match personal things. Here's a picture of my cat. Here's me doing something goofy out in the real world. Here's my business stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. Most of the chatty stuff is either on IG, Instagram, or on Facebook. That's where I share my cat and dog pictures, and talk about how they're distracting me from editing and yada, yada, yada. And I limit the newsletters because I know when I read a newsletter, I'm opening it for some very specific information. And it's not to read about somebody's cat or dog or their toddler. And so I've kind of cut out. It's still, what is in there is still, I still try to keep it conversational. As the tone for the discussion on stuff, because I put out I think in December, Shopify has its own shop app to help you with shopping, and they pay the carbon fee for your
what's a carbon fee?
So when you purchase something, there's an expenditure of energy to get it to you. The gasoline in the truck, the diesel, whatever.
Gotcha.
And so there's a carbon footprint.
Gotcha.
And they, using that app, which is specifically a Shopify app, if you use that app, they pay for the carbon offset for that.
It's the new phrase instead of saying shipping and handling.
Well, it's not the shipping and handling because they're not paying for that. They're helping to combat the environmental impact.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
So when Shopify, we got notified because actually if you download the app, you can actually, the shops that are in Shopify, you can actually get to them much easier, and it's easier to shop. So I wrote a newsletter and said, hey, this is great. Not only, is it, because if you are asking, you're trying to be environmentally friendly, shipping and handling and stuff like that, those shipping costs and the environmental costs of shipping your product to you concerns you. I mean, it concerns me. And so I've actually started using that. But I put out a newsletter saying, hey, we use Shopify. I've told you before I use Shopify on here. They just came out with this app that you might find interesting. It's not PayPal. It's similar to PayPal. You can have your your stuff information in there, so that it's easy to purchase things, and it tracks it for you. You get the little, you click on the item that it's
Right.
tracking for you, and it shows you where it is, because they're tracking that in order to make that carbon footprint pay that fee for you,
Gotcha.
or to, the carbon offset for it. And so I thought that would be something that some of my newsletter readers might be interested in. It's a new app to check out. So I sent out, and that was a little bit more conversational because I had to write the whole thing. But that's what I've been trying to limit. It's about shopping. It's about the sales. It's
Right.
about the 10% off every purchase that you can get if you subscribe.
So you're not looking
But
to.
that's what I limit the newsletter to, and the chatty stuff about, oh, look at my cute cat over here that's like
Right.
getting in front of me so I can't edit. That's an IG picture.
Right.
Yeah.
A comment here.
And then some of the other chit chatting is, the longer stuff is on Facebook. So
A comment here. Wordowin says maybe we should think of newsletters as a compilation of 3 or 4 tweets, which that sounds like it's not a bad way to look at it. You're giving a short
Yeah.
burst of info, just a paragraph or a couple sentences, and maybe a photo, and then a link to what they're actually interested in. I will venture
Yep.
to say, if you have a very interactive audience, I think at certain times of the year, it might not be a bad idea to add some small personal thing during the holidays, maybe.
Oh,
It's
right.
but they're not there. They're not your friends, and if they are your friends, they know you somewhere else where they, as we mentioned, whether it's in
Right.
person or
Yes.
Facebook or whatever.
Yeah. Now, I will also say that, like me personally, for a while, especially as our business switched gears, I wanted to come across as professional as possible. I wanted people to mistake me for a big faceless company, and I have come to the realization that's not why people buy my stuff. That's not why people follow me. They do it because they like me and they like
Right.
what I'm producing. And if they wanted to go to a big faceless company that makes mass-produced stuff, they wouldn't be going to me. So even when I say, I only put the information in there, I make sure that the information is not dry, is not corporate sounding. I am not a slick marketeer, and when I try to be a slick marketeer, I sound fake. So I try to be earnest and honest, but yeah, no pictures of my pets in that. Yes, on Instagram or Facebook, sure, not in the
So
mailing list.
shade it and tint it with your personality, but still get to the
Right.
point.
Yeah.
Don't ramble
Yeah.
on. It's So where do we go from here in the next 15 minutes? Let's look at what's some viable ways to move forward for us and everybody else. I will right now punch what Robert just said again. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're sending out, remember, if you're not a big corporation, don't try to come across as one. Let them know
Right.
you're an individual human being trying to live the dream, try to work your passion, and that means something to these folks, and it means something to you, and that will come through, and that will help, even if it's just something like I believe we mentioned it earlier in this episode. Sometimes we stay on people's news lists because we don't want to hurt their feelings by unsubscribing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, make sure it's got you in the information, because you're the person we care about when we get this. So where are we going with this? How do we face this? We've got social media on the table. We got that. I think we kind of covered that in a blanket way. But with the newsletter thing, should we throw them out the window?
I mean, I don't want to read them, but I don't know that throwing them out the window is the right answer. I think, so we had a mutual friend named Daphne, who
I adore.
I love her. I spent multiple days, multiple hours. She was coaching me through newsletters and social media and everything. And when I tried to follow all of the things that she wanted me to follow, I realized that I did not have enough time to run my business, raise my kids, do anything, create, because I was always on top of messaging.
Right.
And there was never a point to create. And I learned that does not work for me. It works for some people, great, and that is awesome. it's not the way I communicate. And so I actually backed away from almost everything except for Facebook for a long time. Now, as it turns out, Facebook is evidently for old people.
Yes.
I've been informed that Facebook is for old people now. Now, I don't feel old in my mid-40s, but I guess I am. So it wasn't until New Year's where my wife was like, you really need to do Instagram. At least do Instagram. Because I've got a Twitter. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I have one of those things. And I pulled it up, and I would post, just like I did my newsletter, I would post, oh, there's a sale, or oh, we're doing a Kickstarter on Instagram. And she's like, no. This is where you connect to your audience. This is where you show that you are a person. And I'm like, well, all you can do is take pictures and write something short. And she goes, yeah, because a picture tells a lot more than your wordy emails. So I made it a point, and I still make it a point. Some people are like, you got to post on Instagram every day or multiple times a day. I'm like, I can't do it. I will go insane. I post Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on Instagram. I make it a point that I have something to post. Go ahead. Yeah.
This is where Hootsuite can come in. I'm going to read a comment. I'm going to interrupt myself here. Wordowin says, the 1% rule is important too. For a newsletter, 1% sign up, 1% of those read it, 1% of those click through, and 1% of those that actually click through do the thing you sent the newsletter to encourage. So, yeah. And that might vary depending on what your product is, what your personality is, but that's really something to put in your head so you don't see yourself as a failure when you see those numbers and go, ugh.
Right.
But,
and it's a diminishing return every step of the way.
Right. And that's just human nature and business nature. It's just how it is. With Hootsuite, though, you can go in there and you can hook up multiple social medias, and you can send out one post and it sends them all to it. You can also sit down at the first of the month, and something I do is I post to Instagram personal stuff, but I will go schedule, like this week I'm putting up the books, this week I'm putting up the podcast, this week I'm putting up this other thing, and post 1 to 2 times a week on the business side of things, so it's scheduled and I don't have to think about it. And then use my phone to put up the normal stuff that I would put up. So I'm, giving them both sides of it, and they're not just like, why do I even follow this? I know this guy has books and a show. I don't need to see it all the time. Right. But you get a cute cat picture in there, or you get, I went to this place and did a thing, or whatever. Now, something I will say is, and this is rough, something you may want to consider, depending on your business, is very much separating your personal ideology in your posts from your other posts. In other words, again, unless your business relies on, I'm a Republican posting about Bitcoin, you might want to keep, I don't know. It's, I'm pulling something out of the air here. To put up your political thoughts on your page where you're trying to keep a broad spectrum audience. Now, if your audience is part of that venue, that's one thing. As writers, putting up your thoughts on, I found another great book is wonderful. Even if your followers like, I don't read that kind of stuff, they still get it. You're a writer, you're a reader. That's valuable. Just to see you supporting other people. Tara, some thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with caveats. So on Instagram, and I was looking for something that talked about posting on Instagram and when and how often, but I couldn't find it. But Dreampunk Press has an Instagram account.
Right.
And we repost things about dyslexia. We will repost things from the LGBTQIA2S plus community. Sometimes it's something controversial.
Right.
But usually it's, hey, think about this. And that's why I say, the open dyslexic font that we use is not a cure-all for dyslexia, because there's more to it. It is simply a single tool that can be used, experimented with by someone with dyslexia to see if it helps them as, that individual.
Right. But that kind of
There are
stuff
other
fits
things that
into what your company is and what it
right.
does, into the spirit of
What
what
I
you're
was
doing.
getting at is because we use that and we try that. And for some middle grade books that we're working on putting out, there are ways of writing with sentence structure, etc., that can help children who have dyslexia to read, because we still want them to read.
Right.
So we're kind of playing with, how far do we want to go with that? Like, how much is that going to impact the author's voice for us to say, hey, write this way?
Right.
So we're kind of playing with that. We're not sure how far we're going to go with that, but we're not just regurgitating stuff. We're actually looking at, like, how can we actually support this? The same for the LGBTQ stuff that we post, or repost a lot of the time, is it's supportive stuff. But that is because that is also part of our identity. A lot of the other stuff that is just me, that gets reposted on my personal account, which is my personal account. It's not an author account on IG. E.g. Gaddis has an author account. And again, what gets posted there is stuff about teens and young adults, a lot of steampunk stuff, a lot of vampire stuff, a lot of gothic stuff, which a lot of that is me. But that's an author account, and in a way, there's a bit of persona there, but it's a part of me. It's just not political. It is the artistic part of me in a lot of ways. A lot of the books that, even though it's fiction, that I publish under my own name, if you were to read them, you'd go, wow, that's a lot more political than I thought sci-fi could get. And yet sci-fi is very political, always has been.
Yeah.
But again, some of the fantasy stuff under Tara Moeller, if you go and read some of that stuff, there's religious stuff in there too, which can be very controversial, which is why I use a pen name. Those are my two main pen names. I may have others in the future as I write something different that strays from that. But there's a balance that you have to find. And sometimes if you're, sneeze is coming on.
Oh, take a moment. You can let Robert.
Audience is interested in politics. I think sharing your politics is fine. But you have to be willing to recognize that there may be negative consequences to that. And if you're willing to take that risk, go for it.
Yep.
If you're not, don't do it and then go, oh, but that's politics. That's not about you can't separate the two.
Right.
All right. We all know I don't eat at Chick-fil-A.
Right.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Anybody wants to know, ask me. I'll tell you why. But so you cannot separate, if you do not separate fully your personal beliefs from your business, there's going to be ramifications for you.
Right.
So you have to be either willing to take the risk or you don't do that. You keep them separate. And
so once again, I want to say, where do we go? What do we do? What's our thoughts? Robert, do you have some thoughts?
Well, I do have some thoughts. I think first and foremost, diversify. Do as much outreach as you can and be authentic with it. Like Travis may have mentioned on this stream or at some other point, I took a cue from Renaissance performers, and I started streaming on Twitch just a couple weeks ago, and I'm doing it regularly, twice a week, because that's a way to reach my audience, and not just my audience, my friends as well. But I also understand the fact that a lot of my audience is my friends, and a lot of my audience likes all the things I do, so they overlap. And it's a way to be authentic and reach your audience, is to do a radio show, do a podcast interview, keep those things going, as well as your Facebook post. And not your personal Facebook post page. Like we've said, those are for personal things that, like, grandma wants to see pictures of your kids playing in the snow. That's your personal Facebook. You found something cool, that relates to your book, that's your professional author's Facebook.
Right.
And the Instagram and the Twitter. I don't use Twitter very much. But stuff automatically posts to Twitter when I do it. So I consider that, enough and done.
Right.
I have to limit where I'm connecting with social media or I just get overwhelmed.
Right.
But I think the biggest key is to do what you can do and be authentic in doing it. And maybe look for other avenues. Up until this year, up until the pandemic, I made my money selling books face to face to people at conventions. People are like, oh, but you made $6,000 on a Kickstarter. No, I did not.
No.
You all gave me $6,000 on that Kickstarter, and I paid the printer and the artist and the editor, and I walked out owing $2.10.
Yeah.
So I made my money selling face to face, and I had to learn this entire year, and it's been a slow learning process, how to reach people and how to connect authentically with people that I don't see face to face anymore.
I don't think I can say it better than how you guys said it. A couple closing comments before I do the whole closing spiel here is...
Can I add one thing there
Yeah,
real
absolutely.
quick before we leave? Be consistent.
Yes.
If you're posting to IG, make a schedule. Maybe it's once a week, 3 times a week, daily. There are information blogs out there that tell you when's the best time to make those posts. For Facebook, for Instagram, for Twitter. That's what I had gone to look for and couldn't find. But there's lots of them, and I've checked them all, and they're all about the same.
Right.
What they're suggesting that you do. And make a plan. Write it down. What are you going to include in your newsletters? Not the specifics, but the type of information. What type of post are you putting on Facebook? What type of post are you putting on Instagram? If you're using Twitter, what are you putting out on Twitter? If you're using TikTok, what are you putting out on TikTok? Oh, you've got a Twitch stream. What are you sharing? They should be different to a certain degree.
Yes.
But they all should be
related.
If you have a brand, use it. For instance, my little Dream Punk Press logo with the gears inside the cloud it's on our newsletter. It's on our Instagram. It's on Facebook. Anybody sees that, and I've actually had that. Oh, yeah, you're that little writing place. Yeah, that's us. But be consistent. Write it. Put a plan and try to stick to it. But also monitor what's going on. You can get analytics out of your Instagram and your Facebook that tells you, oh, I posted this kind of thing at this time, and it did better than anything else. Do it again. Right. Not the exact same post. But look at what the post, what did you share? When did you share it, etc. That's, and when you start seeing your own trends, track that.
Yeah.
And repeat.
Very good. Wordowin, by the way, earlier said, now I'm considering doing an open dyslexia version of the newsletter. And
go for it.
Wordowin also says, Twitch is my office. I do most of my writing while streaming. My productivity is lower, but I have a lot more fun, and it also connects you to your audience. And some audiences for a live stream will accept you barely talking to them because you're doing what they want to do, and you will get people in there, again, being genuine, being who you are, makes all that difference.
Yeah.
Okay, let me wrap this up, and let me let you guys know that if you have any comments or thoughts on this and you weren't here for the live show to put it into chat, you can email us at rightnightshow@gmail.com. You can also let us know what you're working on, put messages in there that we can read on air for birthdays or upcoming things or whatever you like. Don't forget to support our other podcasts, such as Talk of the Tavern. And thank you to everybody in chat tonight who has interacted with us. Excuse me, I'm just going to get all choked up again. With bits, subs, merchandise, hosting, raids, supporting us on Patreon, or subscribing via PayPal. And we are going to head out while I cough up a storm here. And I will see everybody. And I had this wonderful thing. My cat laid on my keyboard and turned my main screen sideways. So now I have to figure out how to click because my mouse is moving sideways, but only on that one screen out of 3. So this is challenging to. There's the outro.
So go ahead and double button.
Okay, outro music. Where's my mouse?
Thank you for joining author Travis and Sivart and the other writers, content creators, and all-around amazing people for our discussion here on Writing. Join us again soon, and until you do, make sure you create with passion, enjoy the journey, and remember, every night can be right now.